What if Stannis Baratheon defeated the Lannisters at Blackwater Part 2? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. If the video reaches 2,000 likes, a Part 3 will be made. Tyrion quietly sips his wine, brooding over his recent success with the War of the Five Kings. Though Stannis initially won the Battle of the Blackwater, Faith's anger at Stannis ensured that Tyrion managed to claw back power, turning the commoners against him and reclaiming the city for House Lannister. And the cherry on top is it also resulted in the death of his dear father, Tywin. This leaves Tyrion as effectively the sole ruler in the capital. His first act is to have Tommen name him Hand of the King and Regent of the Seven Kingdoms. Now his first course of action is to divide up the spoils. Though he allows Davos and the remnants of Stannis' army to return home, he first demands that they return Dragonstone to the crown, installing a garrison loyal to him there to ensure that no one can effectively blockade the city. Meanwhile, he recognizes the High Sparrow as the new High Septon of the Seven Kingdoms, and orders those knights and men-at-arms captured throughout the war to serve as their protectors, to ensure that the faith can be rebuilt. It is a compromise to ensure that they are protected, but also to prevent them from rearming themselves. The Dornish receive a marriage alliance between Doran's son, Tristan, and Tyrion's niece, Myrcella, while Tyrell's daughter Marjorie will marry Tommen when he comes of age. For a moment, it seems like the South is at peace. Even the North and Riverlands have accepted his peace terms, giving Tyrion a chance to begin his reign in peace. The only sticking point remains the Ironborn, who have never formally paid fealty. The only terms they send are offering an alliance if the crown recognizes their gains in the North, terms that Tyrion rejects. However, since the North is independent, it also means he has no obligation to aid them. Instead, they are free to handle their defenses. However, before he can press that further, he hears of troubles in the Reach as the Ironborn begin their attack on the Shield Islands and along the coast. Euron proves to be a crafty leader who uses unusual tactics to ambush their fleets. More importantly, a large part of their fleet is still committed to the siege of Storm's End. Before a proper response could be organized, the Shields is already taken, giving them a foothold to raid the Reach and expose the coastline. Tyrion reluctantly allows the Red Wine fleet to break off their blockade in Storm's End. Although he tries to offer them turns, allowing the garrison to leave unharmed if they bend the knee and hand over the castle to the Lannister force, they refuse. Instead, the rebel Stormlanders crown his daughter, Shireen, as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. A bold claim, but with only Storm's End and a handful of minor castles, it is effectively meaningless. For now, his war is with the Ironborn, but moving the ships across the Seven Kingdoms is difficult, and during that time, Euron rampages across the coast, practically unchecked, raiding and burning whatever he wishes. Euron proves craftier than either one of his brothers or nephews. Instead of holding land, he willingly sacrifices it, leaving only small garrisons or unreliable vassals that delay his enemies while the core of his fleet arrives. The bulk of his forces are said to be heading to Oldtown, the largest city in the Reach. If that were to fail, the consequences would be catastrophic. Tyrion offers a ship from the west and sends part of the Lannister fleet to reinforce them. Soon the waters of Oldtown churn with activity as the three fleets converge. The Lannister ships, bolstered by the strength of Oldtown's fleet, set sail for the city from the north, while from the east, the returning Red Wine forces finally arrive at the Reach. In between these two are the Ironborn longships, huddled underneath Euron's black sails. His flagship, Silence, holds for a moment, ominous and unnatural, as the sun catches the glint of steel from the Ironborn longships. But, though unnerved, the Lannister and Reach forces attack. Horns blast, sails unfurl, and the Westerosi fleet surges forward in a coordinated pincer maneuver. From the north, Oldtown's warships cut through the waves, bearing down on Euron's flank. From the east, the Red Wine fleet spreads like a crimson tide. Even the more evasive Ironborn longships cannot possibly escape. Instead, Euron watches this from the prow of Silence, laughing as his ship surges forward to help the outer ships of his defense force. These vessels are made up of lesser houses and those whose loyalty is suspect. As a result, they are fish food for the Westerosi fleet. Dozens of ships go up in splinters as the massive war galleys rush into them. While some desperately try to grapple onto the larger ships, few make it to the decks, and fewer still do more than get slaughtered. Soon the waters run red with blood and the bloated bodies of fallen soldiers and marines. But this is by design. The Ironborn captains push these ships forward, sacrificing their lives to bog down the Westerosi advance. Euron's true fleet holds its position at the center, untouched, unmoving. The silence weaves through the chaos, its well-trained crews sliding through the broken-up formations and hitting ships here and there, knocking off oars or simply battling through the chaos. But as he fights, something stirs aboard his flagship. Below deck, there are warlocks, septons, and red priests, all chained, forced to chant alongside Aeron Greyjoy. They speak the words of their gods in their native tongues as mutes whip and force them. Euron heads down to inspect them and begins to slit their throats one by one. Their bodies are tossed overboard. The last one to die isn't a warlock or a priest, but a woman, Thalia Flowers. When the ruins of her body crash into the water, a deep rumble begins to echo beneath the waves. The water darkens. Something vast stirs below. The Westerosi admirals take no notice at first. Their forces press the attack, pushing into the Ironborn's loose formations. Lannister ships shred longboats with volleys of scorpion bolts. Old Town's galleys ram through hulls, sending splintered wood and broken men into the waters. But then the sea itself begins to betray them. The first Lannister ship jolts violently, as if hitting a reef. But before men can correct themselves, a set of monstrous tentacles rip out from the water and begin closing around them. Sailors can only gasp and scream as they close in, squeezing the ship and splintering the oaks that make its hull. It holds for a moment, then shatters, spilling men and debris into the sea, which are soon pulled under. The beast strikes again, lashing out at nearby ships. Ironborn, Hightower, and Lannister ships alike are thrown into the water, spreading terror across the battlefield. More kraken are summoned from this vile sacrifice and drawn to the scent of blood in the water. The pride of the Westerosi navy, hulking dromons, imposing galleys, and swift longships all go under, snapping through their hulls like twigs and dragging men to the depths below. The Lannister and Redwyne admirals shout frantic orders to retreat, but the kraken are relentless. The once disciplined Westerosi fleet collapses in chaos, ships turning on each other in the desperate bid to escape. Fires erupt as burning wreckage crashes into fleeing galleys. From the center, Euron's true fleet begins its advance, a wall of black sails descending on the shattered enemy. They rush to the Redwyne fleet, which remains in chaos. The terror spread by this attack breaks their morale and leaves them easy prey. While they put up some fight and multiple Ironborn ships join them, the warriors howl with glee as they board crippled ships, butchering survivors and throwing banners into the sea, spreading the chaos throughout.
People of Westeros, hear me. The drowned god, the Seven, and the Lord of Light have all knelt before me. I am the true storm, the first and the last, and all who deny him shall drown.
By the time the remnants of the Westerosi fleet limp away, barely a third of their forces remain afloat. The Redwyne ships scatter toward the Arbor in disarray, and the Old Town admirals have no choice but to abandon the bay. Euron Greyjoy sails forward, unchallenged. His fleet surrounds Old Town, and the city's defenders, overwhelmed and demoralized, can only watch as the Ironborn descend upon their shores. Old Town burns as bells toll. All across the streets, defenders desperately try to fight, trying to hold back the endless tide of Ironborn warriors. However, these numbers are endless, and the Ironborn rush through the openings in their defenses. Slowly, street by street, the Ironborn drive the defenders out and leave Old Town at their mercy. Euron Greyjoy has claimed his greatest prize yet. The news of this defeat sends shockwaves across the Seven Kingdoms. Not only did they lose most of their naval power, but they also lost one of the realm's largest cities, all without anything to show for it. Tyrion immediately tries to staunch the bleeding. While he can't challenge Euron at sea, he can retake Old Town and limit the destruction caused by it. Soldiers from Dorne, the Westerlands, and the Reach hurry to Old Town and the Arbor, eager to retake the lost territories, while merchant ships are desperately outfitted for war. The remaining ships are sent out once again. though not to fight the Ironborn fleet. Instead, their goal is simply to find and kill Euron Greyjoy. However, though their scouts brave the bloodied waters of the Arbor and Old Town in search of it, none detect any signs of the Silence or Euron. Little did they know Euron is already making his way to King's Landing. With the royal fleet destroyed and the Red Wine and Old Town fleets scattered, no force can seriously challenge this flotilla, at least until they round the Stormlands. The Ironborn ships slice through the waters, black sails billowing as Euron inspects the fleet glimmering with gold and white, a far cry from the tattered longships of the Ironborn. They are rich Volantine ships, and Euron smiles, signaling the attack. The ships are still in disarray, their disembarkation only half complete. The longships tear into the ships still in the water, cutting through the surf and churning up the water beneath them. On the shore, lines of armored elephants are being led ashore, and sellswords march down gangplanks with banners bearing the Targaryen dragon. Above them, young Griff, Aegon IV, surveys the land with a look of quiet determination. But as they watch the fleets clash, several of their transports erupt in flames as sailors cry out and smoke billows across the water. The Silence plows through the side of a Golden Company war galley, splintering wood and tossing men into the sea. Ironborn boarders leap across, axes swinging as the Golden Company struggles to rally. A second ship explodes in fire and debris as several longships swarm it and board it. Euron watches the chaos unfold with a maniacal grin. He relishes the confused cries of the sellswords, but just as quickly as they appeared, the Ironborn vanish. Euron raises his arm, and black sails turn in unison, pulling away from the slaughter. The Golden Company's ships are left burning, battered, but afloat. The sellswords regroup, though their forces are bloodied. On the shore, young Griff's face darkens as he surveys the wreckage. But there is no time to dwell. The Golden Company assesses their losses, nearly 1,000 men and several ships, but they continue to press inland, bursting across the Stormlands with fire and steel. As they march, though, they are greeted by several allies, Sir Davos Seaworth and the last of the King's men. He led a small trail of knights and retainers. They do not kneel to young Griff or Jon Connington, not even when their ancestral seats are taken. Instead, they come to negotiate. Davos introduces himself as the last King Stannis' hand.
A king who is dead, meaning you are a hand without a master. The king is gone, aye, but the Baratheon blood still flows strong here. We follow his true-born heir, Queen Serene Baratheon. But a king can rule with a queen. Marry Queen Serene, and my men are yours. You're mad. We have 20 times the men you do, and yet you would give me commands. What do you have to offer? You have the men, aye. But look at the battlements from Storm's End, and tell me whose banners fly there. Accept our offer, and see Gilbert Ferring shall change that our men will be yours.
There is a murmuring among the captains. Aegon IV listens intently as Davos continues, his voice calm and steady.
Marry your king to Shireen Baratheon. The boy will have a queen, and together we will take back the Stormlands. If I may, your men are not numerous. If you fight for every scrap of land you take, you will run out of men before even leaving the Stormlands.
The Golden Company's leaders deliberate, but Aegon is quick to decide. A marriage alliance is agreed upon, and the two forces join. Banners of the Golden Company and House Baratheon fly side by side as they march, sweeping through the Stormlands. Castles fall one by one, their lords bending the knee or being taken by the army. Within weeks, hundreds flock to young Griff's banner. As the Golden Company storms inland, Euron Greyjoy's fleet reappears like a wraith across Blackwater Bay. The Lannister garrison on Dragonstone is unprepared, expecting naval support, but finding themselves isolated. They hurry to pull up their coastal defenses, but these are too slow as Ironborn warriors pour ashore, slaughtering the garrison with ruthless efficiency. Smoke rises from the castle as Euron plants his banner atop the battlements. But as he watches the banners rise, he finds a figure approaching from the walls, wearing the red robes of Roller. Euron has his guards bring her before him.
You're a pretty little princess, much better than the last ones I picked up. Tell me, what are you doing here? Don't you know that lions are on the prowl?
I have been watching the flames, searching for the one who shall save us from the great darkness. You are not the one.
You'd best watch your tongue. You won't be the first pretty face I've hurt.
I've backed the wrong king once. I will not make that mistake again. This castle will be your doom. Leave it now, or you shall burn. For the night is dark and full of terrors.
Aye, you're right there. And there is none as terrifying as me.
If you believe that, then you are a bigger fool than I thought.
Back in the Reach, though burned and frightened, they are far from defeated. Survivors of the Old Town fleet rally, gathering whoever they can. Small folk, masterless soldiers, and a scattering of nobles try to retake their homes. On land, villagers and towns harry the Ironborn with guerrilla tactics. Small folk and soldiers flee inland, striking at night after the Ironborn take their towns. They occasionally set fire to longships or strike their camps while they sleep. Out at sea, they harry stray Ironborn ships or roll fireboats to moored longboats, causing some destruction, but they avoid facing them in open battle. But for now, their efforts do little more than anger the invaders. The Ironborn, emboldened by their victories, tighten their grip on the Reach. Euron's lieutenants laugh at the feeble resistance, torching villages and sending prisoners to the depths as sacrifices to the drowned god, or back to the Iron Islands as thralls. Then, on a gray and windswept morning, the skies split with a sound that has not been heard in a century. A roar from the sky.
Dragons!
From the clouds, Daenerys Targaryen descends atop Drogon, her silver hair whipping in the wind. Behind her, Rhaegal and Viserion follow, wings spread wide while the sun bounces off their scales. Together, they manage to block out the high tower. Drogon's flames engulf a cluster of moored longships, the wooden hulls exploding into flame. Sailors scatter in panic, throwing themselves into the water as the pride of the Ironborn Islands burns. Ironborn warriors scramble for bows or crossbows to create a feeble resistance, but their arrows fall short or snap harmlessly against Dragonhide. Seeing this, citizens cheer and rush out, brandishing whatever weapons they can find to strike at their captors. The streets turn into a war zone once again, but this time the Ironborn are on the receiving end of the punishment. From a victorious army, they are now hurrying out to sea. They manage to scramble to the surviving longships just as Rhaegal and Viserion swoop in for their attacks. The harbor becomes a hellscape of fire and smoke. Ships drift ablaze, crashing into one another. Black smoke swallows the sky, turning day to night. Amid the chaos, watchmen spot sails on the horizon, ships cutting through the smoke and fog. The sigil of the Iron Fleet rises above them, the Kraken on black. At first, the Iron Men cheer, thinking it's Victarion coming to save them. Those ships manage to rush out and see what greets them, but rather than slow down, Victorion's iron victory crashes into the nearest one, smashing into splinters and throwing men into the sea. Grappling hooks soar through the air, latching onto Ironborn vessels. Victarion Greyjoy stands at the prow of his flagship, a fearsome figure clad in blackened armor as he signals the attack. The Iron Fleet crashes into its brothers like an unstoppable tide. Victarion's men storm the decks, cutting down their kin without mercy. Ironborn captains curse in shock, trying to rally their men. Some ask him what is the meaning of this, but his only response is a crushing axe.
The sea stone chair is mine, and I come not alone.
As he speaks, the dragons roar above, their flames sweeping over the wreckage. Victarion turns to the captives, hundreds of Ironborn kneeling, disarmed, and surrounded.
I come with Daenerys Stormborn, mother of dragons, and my queen. The sea stone chair will bow to me, and Westeros will bow to her. Sail across the Reach. Tell our king what you saw. They will kneel, or they will burn.
He sends the surviving captains away on their ships as he sails into Old Town to unload his cargo. Thousands upon thousands of fresh troops, sellswords unsullied and freedmen, rush down to Daenerys and ride through the Reach like a storm. They march across the fields of golden wheat, banners of House Targaryen rippling in the wind. Drogon flies above, the message clear to everyone. Arriving in Meereen, Victarion learned Daenerys was already married and remedied that problem with a single command: that her husband be demoted to a salt husband while he is made the rock husband. After explaining the Ironborn's concept of polygamy, Daenerys found this compromise acceptable and gladly demoted his Darzo Larak, and even took Daario Naharis as her second salt husband. At every castle and holdfast, Daenerys offers the same choice: bend the knee or face the flames. Many lords, seeing the devastation wrought on Old Town and the Ironborn, surrender without a fight. The Ironborn's defeat is still fresh, but this, Daenerys' march, is something far worse. For centuries, the inland lord of the Reach felt safe behind their walls from Ironborn raids. Other lords, too loyal or too proud, refuse, and learn what dragonfire can do to stone walls. Mace Tyrell calls off Tommen's marriage with Marjorie and instead offers Willis Tyrell as a salt husband to bind their family to the Targaryens. Seeing the Lannisters' failure to protect them, the Reach turns against King's Landing. Lord after lord kneels to Daenerys. With these fresh forces, the Dornish marches erupt into war. House Martell, eager to strike at old enemies and still loyal to the realm, sends Dornish spearmen across the border. Meanwhile, the Golden Company, now allied with the Baratheon loyalists, marched out of the Stormlands. Their goal was to prevent any Dornish spears or Tyrell swords from reaching the Crownlands. But the balance shifts when Daenerys sends half her forces south. The Unsullied and Freedmen clash with both the Dornish and Stormlanders alike. They prove to be excellent troops, and in the open fields, they are nearly unstoppable. But the Dornish do not fight in pitched battles. Instead, they war through raids and ambushes, harrying the Targaryen advance. Meanwhile, the sellswords and their elephants prove to be equally dangerous in open fields, perhaps being one of the few things Unsullied cannot stand against, coupled with the strong castles of the Marcher Lords, allowing them to hold the line, at least for the time being, as the dragons have all moved north. Skirmishes rage across the rocky hills and ancient fortresses, creating a war that has not been seen for many years. Half her army turns northward, marching to the Westerlands. Sellswords sweep through the countryside, burning villages and driving the small folk into hiding. Kevan Lannister rallies what forces remain, his banners flying from the high walls of Lannisport and Castle Rock. He blocks them in natural choke points along the hills or launching raids on their supply lines. Kevan sends ravens to King's Landing, begging for reinforcements. But with Daenerys claiming the Reach and Victarion seizing Dragonstone, no help comes as they are now cut off. Tyrion Lannister rides at the head of his small, ragged host of hastily assembled levies as he faces down the forces of Jon Connington and young Griff. Tyrion strides forward, looking over at the boy who claims to be Aegon IV. To his surprise, he finds Davos Seaworth standing among them, eyeing Tyrion with a wary curiosity.
Here I stand, a lion among dragons, it seems. You've come to sue for peace, I presume. Peace and more. I come to offer you the Iron Throne. Why would a Lannister make such an offer? Because a Lannister knows when the game is lost. My navy is gone. My realm is split into 3 wearing pieces. The Reach burns, the Stormlands bleed, and the Ironborn have taken Dragonstone. But I can still be useful to you. Allow me to advise you, and in exchange, I ask for one thing. The Rock. Let me remain Lord of Castle Rock.
Useful? Your house betrayed the realm.
He speaks the truth about his predicament. Tyrion is clever. When I fought for Stannis, I saw his mind at work during the Battle of the Blackwater. He may well be the sharpest advisor you could ask for, Your Grace.
All right. Help us retake Dragonstone, and then we'll talk. Tyrion smiles and begins to lay out his plans. The remaining ships and royal fleet are assembled under King's Landing. Their plan is no secret, and they gather their ships to strike. But Euron Greyjoy is no fool. From the dark holdfasts of Dragonstone, he makes ready to greet them. He gathers more prisoners to sacrifice, but one among them stands more important than most. Aeron Dampfire,
bound and weeping prayers. A king's sacrifice. What greater offering could there be? The combined fleet of Aegon IV approaches Dragonstone with banners flying. A handful of ships, but given how few forces Euron has, they believe it should be enough. As the fleet draws closer, Ironborn longships slip out of hidden coves and inlets, their hulls dark as the sea itself. The first clash is furious. Flaming arrows streak through the rain-choked sky. Ironborn axes cleave through planks and limbs alike. But just as the defenders seem to be breaking under the weight of Aegon's forces, the water begins to churn. Kraken. Massive tentacles rise from the waves, latching onto ships and tearing them apart. But instead of screaming soldiers, they find the ships packed high with casks and barrels. The Ironborn's cheers turn to confused looks. Then, fire. The Kraken lurch back, flailing as green fire erupts across the waves. Wildfire, ships loaded with barrels of the burning substance explode, the flames clinging to water and beast alike. Men burn in the waves, and the Kraken, wreathed in unnatural flame, writhe and sink into the abyss. Davos Seaworth watches grimly from the deck of his ship, hidden in the distance. Where's your sea god now?
As the Kraken retreat, the bulk of Aegon's fleet surges forward. Euron's forces are overwhelmed, surrounded by superior numbers. His warships are smashed, scattered, or captured. Euron Greyjoy himself is taken and dragged to the decks of Aegon's flagship, bloodied but still smiling.
You think this is over? The sea always takes its due.
In the dungeons of Dragonstone, the Red Woman is found.
He is correct. You have seen what his blood can do. Allow me to sacrifice him to the Lord of Light. A king's blood, born of salt and storm.
And what would sacrificing him achieve, my lady?
The means to challenge the Stormborn. I had thought that Stannis was the one true king, but it seemed I had arrived too early. Dragons.
That's our theory. If you enjoyed this story and want to see it continued, like the video. If it reaches 2,000 likes, a part 3 will be made. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.